You want a piece of paper? Okay. There is no motions.
Everything is just if any motions come up, you'll have to be prepared on the run to do it. No. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this workshop session of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors. I would like to call the meeting to order and not surprise Norm with the gavel too much. Would like to ask everyone to please rise, and Mrs. Lindsay will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was doing the Gary Chrisman version, yes. Before we have public comment this evening, I would like to announce that the Board of Supervisors did meet an executive session prior to this meeting, and we received information from the township manager on a number of items. And with that, we will proceed to public comment. Our public comment is for any items that are not on the agenda tonight. If you wish to comment on an item that is on the agenda, you'll be given an opportunity to do that as the board discusses that particular agenda item. So if you have an item not on the agenda that you would like to discuss, please feel free to come to the podium. Anybody have any items not on the agenda? Okay, well, that was easy. Seeing none?
Mr. Henry?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to recognize our police department. This week is National Law Enforcement Week, and I wanted to thank the police department for all that they do for the Lower Paxton Township residents. If you see them out, please say thank you to them. We would appreciate it.
Thank you. Do any other board members have any comments you would like to make? See, it's not on the agenda, but generally at this point in time, we do this. You are correct.
Felt that it needed to be.
No, I'm glad you brought that to our attention, Robin. Okay, with that, we're going to move to a general discussion on the state of solid waste and recycling collection. And we have Mr. Stang from Waste Management with us. Mr. Stang, if you would please come to the podium, and welcome.
Good evening, Tom Stang from Waste Management. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new ones as well for me. So thanks for having me. I was asked, Brad had asked me to come out and attend your meeting tonight. Brad and I worked some years back when he was in Frackville and Borough Council, and I was working the field as I do now in soliciting municipal bids, and so we have a history in the past, and it was a positive one. So we look forward to working with you, Brad. I'm open for any questions that you may have directly for me. If you're looking for some more specifics as to what's going on in the world of solid waste and recycling, I can jump into that first, whichever direction you'd like me to go.
Maybe an overview would be good. I understand markets have changed considerably, and
that would be the biggest issue in the industry right now. Trash hasn't changed a whole lot. We still pick it up, and we still take it to the incinerator in Harrisburg, where we're mandated in Dauphin County to dispose of it. Rates are relatively stable. We have a couple years out where we know what the pricing is going to be on the cost of disposal, and we're fixed and we're set with the new contract that we started last July of 2018, our 5-year contract with the township. We purchased 3 new trucks for that 5-year contract, and they're out on your streets right now. Looked bright and clean the first day and came back, and they looked like they were already beat up after 1 day or 1 week of picking up. But the guys were real happy and excited to get the equipment that they're running on the streets. Recyclables is the biggest issue and problem that not only Waste Management but the entire industry is dealing with these days, and it's the commodity pricing. Probably in excess of 85% of our recyclables that not just Waste Management but other haulers in the United States collect go to China primarily. And the material that was going to China basically coming from your streets and into our trucks, and then to facilities where the commodities are separated. And
I was just thinking that.
and plastics are bound up, and tins and cardboard. Typically, the China markets would accept up to 15% contamination. So what they would do periodically is you would have a bale of plastics or a bale of newspaper or cardboard, and they would randomly break open a bale. They'd get a boatload of material come in. They would break it open, and if it was 15% less contamination, it was acceptable to them. Well, I think as time went on, the commodities, the material got sloppier and sloppier, and they made changes rather significantly, and now half of 1% is what they'll take as far as contamination. So if contaminated bales went from 15 to half of a percent of contamination, and it's caused a lot of problems. We're working with our customers to try and educate them on what is and is not acceptable. Some commodities that were part of original bid specs, primarily plastics 1 through 7. You'll see a recycle symbol on a piece of plastic. That is not necessarily an acceptable recyclable commodity today. Excuse me. In today's markets, we're looking at plastics 1, 2, and 5. Primarily are the numbers that you would be accepting. A big problem that we run into are plastic bags. A lot of people will take in their own kitchens possibly, and you'll have a trash can, 13-gallon trash can bag for your trash, and they'll also take the recyclables and they'll put it in a plastic bag and take it and put it in the recycling container. And those plastic bags cause tremendous problems with the sorting equipment. It's when we take the material we collect at curbside and we take it to a material recovery facility, a MRF, an MRF. When we take it to those facilities, it goes through a whole sorting process with blowers and magnets and conveyor belts, and the plastic bags, the grocery bags that you might get from Giant or Carnes or wherever, those bags get caught up in the sprockets, and it'll shut down processing lines, and that causes a lot of problems on the processor, which in turn will then charge the hauler for bringing in contaminated materials. I can tell you that 5 years ago, we were getting rebates. You were getting rebates. You had a contract with Penn Waste where the township was getting rebates on your recyclables, and it was probably in the $50 per ton range. Now, you don't have a contract for your recyclables with this last bid. We wish it would be zero, but right now, we are depending on, not just under your contract, but wherever throughout the state, we could be paying anywhere between $40 a ton to $90 a ton. The disposal for trash at the Harrisburg incinerator is $90 a ton. City of Philadelphia just signed a contract to dispose of their recyclables for $100 per ton. Now, they have a higher contamination rate than certainly we do here in Lower Paxton Township, but that's the reality of it. And your last bid that you did, we figured a cost as to what to get rid of recyclables, and it has gone up quite a bit since that last bid. So you got in at a pretty good time. Bidding it today, you would not be looking at the pricing and the numbers that you have today. So that is, if there's any message I'd like to get to the residents is do all you can to clean your recyclables before you put it in your container to be collected at curbside, and please eliminate any plastic bags that go in. When you go to the grocery store and they say plastic or paper, ask for paper. Put your recyclables into the paper bag and then take that out. You can then still dump it loosely into your recycle container, and that craft paper bag can also be recycled. So that's the industry in a nutshell with recycling. and I'll be open for questions
I
either
have a
way.
couple of questions. With the yard waste,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of complaints that they put it out and they don't come. And then when the people call the number, they say, well, our truck was full, so just put it out the next time. And I don't think that's fair to the residents. Then they have to keep it for another 2 weeks. If the truck's full, why can't, or you don't have another truck, why can't they send another truck out?
That answer that you get, that the truck is full, I mean, I'm not doubting that that's what you're saying a resident is telling you and you're telling me.
Well, they're calling the number that's, I guess, on the bill is what
Right.
they're calling.
And the customer in the call center is giving information that is quite surprising. That is to me that it's full.
That's what they're getting.
There's no, someone in my call center would have no idea if my truck is full or
Okay,
not, to be
well,
quite honest with you.
I've had a couple calls, and I'm just relating
Nope,
to you.
and that's-
And I tell them also to call the township, because we now have the township keeping track
Yeah.
of, when they're not, I mean, I've had a couple calls where the street, like up at Lexington and Madison the other week, they never picked up the garbage.
The what?
They never picked up the garbage, and it wasn't the recyclables, it was the garbage. So I called into the township, and they said that they would get in touch, they missed. There was one out on Nassau with recyclables, she called me. They went right past her house, and the recyclables were sitting there, and they never picked them up. And so I told her, please to call the township and also to call Waste Management. And they said, well, we'll get it the next week. And I don't think that's fair, that if they put it out and they're missing, I don't think the residents have to, should have to wait.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that they should have to wait either. If it's missed and it was out, it should be recovered.
Right.
And I would ask that as you get residents that give you that information, that they do call the township,
Yeah, I tell them. I
okay?
mean,
And then the
Amanda's
township
keeping.
will contact my route supervisor, and we typically recover them that way. I'm sad to say that our call center is based in Phoenix. Many corporations today, their call centers could be based anywhere around the world. Ours are in Phoenix, and we do have all the tools for them to go into, and if they identify the resident as a Lower Paxton Township, there's a whole script on services and all that's available to them to share. And if it's a missed stop, it really should go into a ticket is to be generated and recovered. If a resident is getting that kind of message, I would encourage them to contact
Well, that's what-
Amanda
'cause
or
it-
Brad or whomever, and that'll get to my route supervisor, I know, and sometimes it does get escalated to myself. Waiting, especially in the yard waste, 2 more weeks is not, and I know, we do now have computers on our trucks. The routes are sequenced, and when they come up to 1423 Union Deposit Road and it's not out, they're able to click that it's not out.
Right.
And there are times we get calls saying, you missed me, and we do oftentimes have not outs. It's not always the case. I understand our guys do miss periodically.
And that's my next, that'll lead to my next question.
Sure.
Again, the timing, 6 a.m. And I've had calls where they're starting at 5:30, 25 after 5. So if we can just try and keep that, and again, I tell them to call into the township. Is Amanda keeping a record?
Yes.
And then is she relating that to Mr. Stang then?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I have 43 complaints that have
Okay.
come in since August of 18. Now, I would imagine that they're just the ones that are coming to the township.
Right, right. And
Others
even,
that are coming to us.
yeah, and when I tell people to call the township, it's up to them to call, or are they calling the call center? So, I sometimes will call in, talk to Amanda, hey, blah, 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 or talk to Brad, but I'm just relaying what I'm hearing. And, we just renewed the contract, so just trying to give them the service, for the contract that we renewed, last July.
I would like to say that I recognize there's more calls than what come to your office, because they go right to our call center. So whatever that number is. But I'd like to also ask you to keep in mind that there's about 14,500 residential homes we pick up each week for trash. We also pick them up for recycling. That's 29,000 opportunities a week that we could have an error, have a problem.
I know, I'm just telling you what I hear, because we get
I
it.
understand. I get
We
your
get it
end.
from this
I
end,
just
so
wanted to
just-
also
yeah.
make sure that, you know, people could say, I don't want any complaints coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think based on the numbers, the guys do a nice job. There are always going to be situations where people aren't happy because of whatever it might have been. Sometimes, it could be a variety of reasons as to why a guy may have missed, or he may have taken a portion and didn't take it all. But I think that's why it's good for me to come before you periodically, to see what you have going on. I can share what we have going on. The other thing, and if there's more on service-related issues that I neglected to talk about the industry, is the labor side of it. And it's the trucking industry as a whole again, and getting truckers. I mean, you can drive on 81 or 83 or wherever, and you'll see billboards hiring drivers. And it's even more difficult in our industry, where the elements of cold and wet and heat and all that is a challenge for us each and every day to secure and to keep drivers. So that's another part of what's going on in the industry. How about other service-related issues that you may
Good.
have, or questions?
I just want to, well, first, Mr. Stang, from what I hear from the township people, they really enjoy working with you. And I hear good things about it, so thank you.
Thank you.
So should residents call the company first and then the township to follow up if they're not satisfied?
We're equipped at our call centers to take the calls. I think sometimes call center people are quick to give an answer that may be standard they're answering calls for services all throughout the country. They should be going to my Lower Paxton, we call them our green pages, to see exactly what the services are.
In theory,
what the
so
processes are.
if their trash is missed, they should be able to call your number and, or that is Waste Management's
Right.
public number, and someone should come around and get the trash that day.
Depending on the time of the day.
Depending on the
and
time of the
ticket,
day.
but we have recoveries set we're in the township 5 days a week.
Yeah,
So. we
but
should get
they
that-
shouldn't wait a week or 2 weeks in the
They
case
should
of your
not, they
waste.
should not be waiting a
That's-
week. If I would instruct residents to first call Waste Management, if they have another issue pertaining to that call, to contact the township office. The township office then typically contacts my route supervisor, Tom Alexander, who oversees all my residential guys. And at times, it does get, it does come to my attention on certain things. I would ask you all, if you want to bypass a step and reach out to me directly, that's fine. I do get my phone rings with residents calling me. I mean, it's not my preference to be, but when I do have a conversation with a resident directly, I then will typically give that resident my number to have them call me directly to avoid call center issues or even bothering the township with it. At that point in time, I typically go to my route supervisor and say,
Yeah,
what's going
well,
on.
and as you said, putting it in perspective, the number of opportunities for there to be a miss, and then you consider the actual misses, the numbers are pretty good, considering we're dealing with humans who are doing the job. And I don't, if the process is, I don't know that I would want everybody the very first time anything bad happens to call the township.
Yeah.
If they can go through a way, as long as in the end they get a satisfying result, then, I would like them to do with whatever the protocol is, unless they're beginning to have repeat problems or unless, things like that.
Yeah, if it's repeat problems, I mean, even if it's a customer that was a Tuesday pickup and they were missed Tuesday and we recover them on Wednesday, and then next Tuesday the same thing happens again,
Right.
I think that person then should probably reach out to the.
That's
township.
exactly what I'm saying, yeah, something like that, then you know, but, and then for recycling, is there a lot that residents can do to really affect any change on, as far as, what's considered contaminated? I mean, I never know how much, are these peanut butter jars, am I supposed to be scrubbing them clean, or?
Yeah, I mean, I get the peanut butter jars and the mayonnaise and how difficult that is, but if you could at least try and, get some hot water in it and fill it up halfway and shake it to get some of it out, that's helpful. The other problem that is sometimes the wet paper or cardboard that's put, newspapers, virtually, we don't have a newspaper market anymore because everything's electronically. But with Amazon and all the deliveries that come to people's homes, cardboard is huge today compared to 5, 6, 8 years ago. That cardboard gets wet. And when you have wet cardboard in the middle of a bale and it sits on a boat for a couple weeks, going to
It's
a foreign
pulp.
country,
It's back
it
to
gets
pulp.
moldy, and that's part of the contamination too. So some of those factors we can't control. We do see that more and more municipalities have gone to the carts with the lids, and that was part of your last bid, but it was just an option that we didn't go down that
And
road.
are we at the point now where it's just corrugated cardboard? So, just corrugated, is that
It's just corrugated what?
recycling?
No, we still do all the single stream, the tins, the glass, the aluminum.
No, I mean as far as cardboard goes. As far as cardboard goes, is it just corrugated?
No. You can put other
Okay.
fiber products. You can put newspaper in, and you can put cereal boxes and things
All
of
right,
that
well,
sort.
because sometimes the emphasis seems to be on corrugated cardboard, but if you look at some of those animated features that you
what's
get from
acceptable
these
and not.
things, that's, at first blush, that's how I read it, but I didn't think that was
Yeah,
accurate.
I use fiber and cardboard sometimes interchangeably. And I can also provide you an updated picture PDF format of acceptable, non-acceptable material that you could also put on your website, and I think that would be helpful for residents as well.
That would be very helpful. I assume that's on your website?
It is on our website.
Yeah, it would be good, Brad, if
I
we
think we
could have
did that.
Leanne
I thought-
add it to ours,
I thought-
or is it
I thought
already
we
It
did.
is
there?
already.
Yeah.
If not,
Okay.
we'll go that route.
Well, it's always changing, so that's good.
Yeah, it's always a question is what goes into recycling bin and what should not, so. Any other board questions?
Just one quickly. Have you ever or do you currently own a Mustang?
I do not. I have not. But I have a niece whose name is Shelby.
Why are you selling Mustangs?
No.
Just the Stang name.
Oh, okay.
And there's a
Now
model
I
of
get it.
Mustangs for people that it's called a Shelby, so.
Ah.
And I'll check into the start time issue because,
Yeah, I've
I
had
mean,
some people.
we had that issue before, and every morning we have a safety meeting with all of our crews, and they had to redo the start time of the safety meetings because of the Lower Paxton contract start time. So I don't even think that they start their safety meeting, it's a safety briefing, it might be 10 minutes on a topic. I don't even think they start that until 5:20, I think, is their start time for that.
Yeah, I had a call the other week, and I can't remember where it was, but they were there at 5:30, so, yeah.
Residential, I mean, that would be a thing I'd also check, residential, could it be a commercial truck that's getting
Yeah.
in there too, so.
Well, the commercials are allowed to start before 6?
I don't think they are, but it's not always
I was gonna
waste
say, 'cause we
management.
had
It's not
that
always waste
issue-
management.
Yeah, we had that issue out at Springford at the apartments, and then they were coming into Public Works, Jeff. They were there at 4:15 in the morning.
Yeah, the Public Works was
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
That-
but
that
I
would
think
be our-
Springford was too when they checked the GPS or whatever. But that was another issue that we handled, about a year or so ago, so, okay. So your call center out in Arizona, who do they call then? Do they call the route supervisor? Is that who gets the complaints?
If it's a missed pickup, they don't call, a ticket is generated
Okay,
for that address. A recovery ticket is generated and should go on the driver's route sheet for the next day. If it's, I think there's like a shut-off time of maybe noon that it all comes through our local office first for review, and that a lot of times Tom, my route supervisor, is picking up misses in his pickup truck, and it's not necessarily the traditional rear load truck.
Okay, so the office that takes care of Lower Paxton is being notified that there was, okay.
Our office locally that
Yeah.
provides the service, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have any public questions or comments? Okay, seeing none.
Thanks for coming in, I appreciate it.
Thank you for the update.
Pleasure. I also saw on your agenda the next topic, so I might even have something to say on whatever you're going to be talking about on the hazardous
Oh, the
waste side.
hazardous
Well,
waste.
don't
Oh,
go
that'd
too
be
far
great.
from the podium then.
That'd be great.
The next topic is somewhat related. We are going to have first presentation and discussion of proposed ordinance 1903. This would be to amend Chapter 165 of the Codified Ordinances, further regulating curbside disposal practices and hazardous waste collection. And Mr. Godshall will explain what is involved in proposed ordinance 1903.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So this ordinance comes as a suggestion by DEP, actually, in order to amend the current solid waste and recycling ordinance, which actually has not been updated since 1994 here in the township. The amendments reflect the current DEP requirements. They will also afford the township a more favorable position when applying for grants, especially the 902 and 904 recycling grants. So the major amendments to Chapter 165 found in this ordinance are found in Article 2, which really just add definitions for assistance with some enforcement abilities of the waste contract, as well as some property maintenance. A few of the definitions that you'll find in that addition are bulky waste, construction and demolition waste, municipal waste, things like that. The next major change to the chapter would be found in Section 165-12, which is storage, handling, and disposal of waste and recycling. So it would essentially just require that it would change some of the requirements for the storage on residential property of certain types of containers. It changes where the containers must be placed, as well as and which times that the recycling and solid waste containers are allowed to be placed at the collection site. Basically, the amendment makes it so that the containers must be placed 8 hours before or 8 hours and removed 8 hours after a collection on any given week. It also provides a requirement to have lids placed on recycling containers, which now currently there is a requirement for that on our solid waste containers. So this just simply places that requirement on the recycling containers as well, which will help to mitigate some of the recycling blowing around the township. And so they are the major changes that are found in the amendment, and I would be happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Stang is here as well.
Brad, is this residential requirements or commercial requirements or both?
They are for the residential, yeah, as per the waste management contract that we have.
I guess the biggest one
Is the
will be, I'm looking at these bulk containers. Are these the things you use during renovations, or is this something else? What do we consider bulk containers?
I'd have to.
Are these
What
And
section,
what-
what section are
yeah.
you referring to, Chris?
165-12?
The whole?
Well,
which
B.
B?
Yeah, if that's, it looks like that's changing. I'm not real clear.
There are changes to 165B. I'd have to. I'm trying to pull up here where it refers to bulk containers.
16512B, storage on residential property, containers.
A lot of this looks like what we already have in place. We're not replacing this entire ordinance, just these couple of areas, correct?
Correct.
No,
Yeah.
I see subsection C1 and subsection C2 bolded. So I don't know if that indicates that there's a change or anything. More importantly, I think, is going to be the lids on recycling containers. And that's going to obviously make sure people know about that, and hopefully people have options for where to buy them. We've always used a lid, but hopefully there's plenty of convenient places out there to get them. I think we get a pretty steady number of complaints from people who live downwind from on various streets, and when they blow, then they're the ones that have to clean it up. So this is going to help them, and hopefully people will be able to find places that sell recyclables with lids on them without too much trouble. And we can verify the container thing
Okay.
later, Brad. That's
Okay, I'll get back to you on that.
Mr. Steng, did you have some
The only
comments
thing-
on this?
The only thing I would say about the recycled containers with lids, I think it might be a challenge unless you bought a new container to get a lid. I don't know that you can purchase just lids to put on an existing container. And I know carts were part of the last contract, and we elected not to go with the cart option. There are likely opportunities for grant money to go towards cart purchasing, and you know, I'd be happy to try to get involved in a little of that.
You
with
mean the big cans with wheels?
No, just for recycling, or are you talking?
Yeah, maybe do it just for
Because
recycling.
we had a lot of opposition from the HOAs
Yes, yeah.
because of the
I'm
big
just,
ones.
I mean, that
Yeah.
has the lid, and it would,
Uh-huh.
you know, help with that portion of it. It certainly would be your call on that, but I don't know if it was more of the opposition that you got from the residents or the cost that was tied to it, if it was the opposition.
It was the
side.
size of the cans, which I know that the trash ones are bigger than the recycling ones, if I recall. But the general size was the opposition. And I know a lot of people use just about anything
Yeah.
for recycling. And yeah, so for those, you're not going to go out and buy the lid for
Yeah.
some of these, uniquely shaped rectangle type things. You probably would, in many cases, have to buy a whole new
Right.
thing. So, and that's,
It could be that could be problematic. I would envision it, you know, if someone's just using an open container that was a trash can for them at one point in time, and it's kind of taking the next step to become the recycling container, and you have a label on it, or they painted recycling logos on it somehow.
well, and this is probably a good point to ask our solicitor, is this something, these proposed changes here, things that are mandated by people at a higher pay grade,
From what I understand,
the federal, state?
when Amanda was contacted with regard to the recycling grant, DEP realized that our ordinance was not updated for a long time, and so they provided her, I believe, with some sort of model ordinance language. I think that's where a lot of this came from, but I'm not sure. I've seen it. A lot of this is pretty much like our old ordinance, but there are some things that are new, like the part that deals with the township having to enforce federal and state hazardous waste regulations and so forth. So that was really new. We never had to do that before. But that's where I understand that it came from. So I guess the short answer to your question is yes, at least some of that came from DEP, that they were mandating that we put some of this language in our ordinance.
Okay. And just the other thing, I saw the household hazardous waste. Waste Management does have a program where we offer at your door pickup of household hazardous waste. If you would be interested in more information on that, I can get myself on a schedule for another work session and do a presentation. I certainly wasn't equipped to get that until I saw it on your agenda, but I could come back in another meeting and talk more on, you know, pool chemicals, electronics, oils, pesticides, all of that that's stored in many people's garages that, a lot of times they'll just try and sneak it in with the trash and get rid of it that way. But we do have a service that's available where,
okay.
based on an on-call basis, we'll schedule a box truck that will come by with licensed hazardous waste handlers to separate and to collect that material, so.
Things like paint cans, I get questions about that. What do I do with a partially filled old paint can? So they can call and schedule to have that picked up.
Correct, it would be a different vehicle altogether. And it's, like I said, it's a box truck that comes around with a lift gate, and we'll put.
Is this on your website, maybe, if we,
It is not on my website.
it's
but I can
not
get-
widely publicized, is it?
It's moving this way.
Okay.
We're in the final stages of getting my hauling company in Camp Hill
Okay.
permitted to accept the material, bring it back, separate it, and then, I think it's an 80% of the material that's recovered is recycled. So,
That'd be big.
yeah.
Is there an extra charge for that, or is that part of the?
There would be a charge. You don't get charged per occurrence. Everyone gets charged whether they would
Whether
use
they
the
use it, that
service
was
or
my
not.
question.
Okay.
And it's about $2 a month per homeowner. So for $24 a year, you can basically get rid of household hazardous waste. It would cost you that much to, in some places, just to get rid of an old giant TV set somewhere, and that could be part of the service as well.
Okay.
Tom, can we go back real quick to the recycling container? When we had done the contract, were we purchasing the containers as the township, or was that built into the bill?
That was part of I believe that was on the hauler, the township was not purchasing.
Okay, so that would have went into the bill for the resident then?
Right,
Okay,
right.
okay.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the proposed ordinance will go to solicitor for review, and he'll take care of all the legalities for queuing that up for us. Item number 6 on our agenda is a discussion on Coons Park. They have a football field bleacher project. Mr. Godshall.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mr. Gary Sheeler, resident, has come forward some time ago with an offer to donate funds to construct 2 permanent bleacher sets at the football field at Coons Park. The bleacher sets would each have 10 rows of seating and properly accommodate ADA persons. A raised pad would need to be constructed upon which the bleachers would be placed, and a path would be extended from the concession stand to the new bleachers. Both of these components would be completed by the township's Public Works Department, and the township engineer has reviewed and signed off on the concept, and the Linglestown Football Association is in support of the project as well. So the reason this project is before the board tonight is due to a slight gap in between the project cost and the private donation by Mr. Sheeler. The total project cost is estimated to be $53,918, and Mr. Sheeler's quite generous donation is in the amount of $32,000. So the remaining $21,918 gap has not been allocated in the 2019 budget. And so, therefore, I'm just looking tonight from the board some guidance in terms of where you want staff to head in this on this project. We have to get something to Public Works Department in order for them to schedule the project in their upcoming seasonal activities schedule. So they have to do that quite soon. With all that, actually, Mr. Sheeler is in the audience tonight, and so if the board has any questions for me or for Mr. Sheeler, I'm sure we'd be happy to answer those questions tonight.
Only thing I'm just wondering is this something that was in the plans, in the works for a while, or was it driven by the generous donation? Is this something that was long time coming, or is it just a result of someone trying to do something good?
Yeah, I believe it was brought upon us by the donor who had requested the project and followed up with funds to make it happen. I believe the project has been in front of the township for quite a number of months now. It started with Mr. Wolf, and I know Mr. Chrisman had been approached on the project, and so there has been some board interaction with the project in some way for a few months now, but we're finally at a point now where we have all the cost estimates ready, and the solicitor had reviewed certain portions, and like I said, the engineer had also taken a look at it, so we're at a point where we know the cost and know the need for additional funding, so.
I guess the first question would be, the Parks and Rec budget, how are we doing so far this year? Would there be room in that budget to move around $21,000 to accommodate this project, or would that require an allocation from some other source, which I'm not quite sure what that would be?
Terry, do you want to come up?
Terry, I don't want to put you on the hot seat here, but if you would come up to the podium here and maybe let us know. I mean, it is May, so we're a little over 4 months, a third through the year. So how are we doing with the Parks and Rec budget?
Well, this, where I see this fitting in the Parks and Rec budget is through the funds that we call the escrow funds. You're familiar with that funding. That, I mean, there are funds there. There are a lot of projects that we can spend money on. And as of right now, that not much has been spent from the $160,000 that's, in that budget for this year.
Terry, is any of this or all of this required to be bid?
In this case, the materials are supplied by a CoStarz vendor.
Okay.
So in that regard, they do not have to be bid.
How about labor?
Labor was proposed at prevailing wage rates because the project is over $25,000.
So what you're saying is that the escrow account has the 160-some thousand unallocated dollars in it. There are a variety of projects that could be used for.
Correct.
But if we wish to take $21,000 out of that escrow fund, those are dollars that are available for us should we choose to want to do that.
Correct. There are park improvements that can be made long-term, well beyond the money allocated
Yes,
currently for this year.
certainly.
Terry, the bleachers that are there, are they in pretty bad shape? Is that the reason for them being replaced?
The reason, as I understand it, is that they are on, number one, on the opposite side of the field from where they want to place them, which makes it rather hard for people to get to because it's on the Balthaser Street side, and that is considered their home side because that's where the bleachers are.
Probably not.
And they have to, this will enable us to have a path to the bleachers. It will be closer to the concession stand, closer to the restrooms, closer to parking.
More of a convenience for the participants that are there. Okay.
Mr. Klein, you have some comment on this?
Is it on here? Yeah. The bleachers we put there now are very small. They're very old. They're too small for what's happening there on the weekends. I can't say that we were planning, or Terry was planning on buying new ones, but when Mr. Sheeler came with this offer, it made everybody start thinking. So there is a need for new bleachers. The scope is because of his generosity.
And you use the word old, so you don't want anybody, if they're that old.
They're pretty low, so it
okay.
wouldn't be much of a, that's another thing. They don't really handle the crowd.
Well,
So, but
It just strikes me that in terms of prioritizing projects, if we have a public donation that will take care of the larger share of a project and we can have a public-private partnership to do it, if we don't do this now and we have to do it 3 or 4 years down the road, that donation may not be there and the cost will also go up. So we would expend over 50% probably $55,000, $60,000 down the road, as opposed to $21,000 now. So if escrow funds are available, just my view is it would be a wise move to participate with the donor to get the project done, rather than pay for it ourselves down the road.
Great. And what a generous donation.
Yes.
Generous,
Yeah, very
yes.
generous.
Any other board thoughts on it? That's just my thought. I'm not speaking for the whole board here.
That makes sense to me.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we're not positioned for a vote on this evening, I believe. We cannot do a vote on it, or
This is a public meeting. You're allowed to vote if you want
allowed?
to.
Okay. In which case, does the board have a pleasure on this? Mr. Chrisman isn't here, so somebody else is going to have to step into the void on motions tonight.
I'll make the motion. I make the motion that we accept the generous donation of Mr. Gary Sheeler, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, a little over $32,000.
$32,000.
$32,000, and the township would pay $21,918 for the new set of bleachers at Coons Park.
Second.
So moved, and it is seconded. Is there any public comment on this before we cast a vote? Any additional board member comments? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. And if the donor would please stand up for us so we can, I know you said he's in the audience, and or you want to remain anonymous, sir. Okay, you're having a hard time getting up. That's okay. Hey,
Thank you.
Thank you so
sir.
much.
You know,
Thank you.
We greatly appreciate it. Sorry I made you have to get up there, and I see it was a bit of a struggle, but thank you. We're all getting there. Mr. Chrisman isn't here for me to make comments about, so I will just let that go. He's not here to defend himself, so I should go ahead. Anyhow, thank you.
Jeff?
Jeff? Yes.
Thank you, Terry and Jeff.
Thank you, Terry and Jeff, and everybody on staff who participated in that. It's always good to see that we're flexible and open to suggestions and new ideas, and able to take advantage of opportunities when they come our way. So we'll have to go over and watch a football game this fall. With that, we need to have a public hearing on the Verizon Cable franchise agreement renewal, and for that, we will turn to Mr. Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the public hearing of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors regarding the cable franchise agreement renewal for the township. This public hearing is held pursuant to Section 626 of the Federal Cable Act, which sets forth the process for franchise renewal. The township's current franchise with Verizon will expire soon, and the township is in the process of renewing the franchise. This public hearing is part of a preliminary portion of franchise renewal in which the township reviews the cable operator's past performance and identifies the township's future cable-related community needs. As such, as a part of this public hearing, we invite comments from any citizens who wish to speak regarding either or both of the aforementioned subjects. Franchise renewal is the best opportunity for municipalities to assert their rights with respect to their cable operators and to obtain important benefits in return for granting the cable operators the right to use their public rights-of-way. These benefits include a state-of-the-art cable system now and in the future, strong customer service standards, free services to community facilities, better reporting requirements from the cable operator, maximized franchise fees, an educational and governmental channel, capital support for active educational and governmental channels, legal protections of the rights-of-way, and better mechanisms to enforce the franchise agreement. These are just some of the potential benefits available through franchise renewal. Citizens may address these items or any other cable-related items that are important to them. Now it is time to obtain any citizen comments for anyone who wants to offer them. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to make any comments on the cable franchise agreement renewal with Verizon? Seeing no response, Mr. Chairman, it would be in order at this time to close the public hearing on the franchise agreement renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. And no action is planned tonight on this agreement?
No.
Thank you.
It's not even, there isn't even an agreement yet. This is just the beginning of the
The
process.
beginning of the process, okay. So
And
we're going to
when-
hear much more about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we have something on paper, it will be made public, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so people can comment on something that they can read.
Okay, we need now to move to item 8. We are going to have a discussion on funding proposals for the Friendship Community Center. And the township, of course, is in the process of preparing for a major bond issue to fund a number of items. And it has been brought to our attention that there are some capital needs at the Friendship Center. So, Mr. Godshall, you and a wide array of senior staff are going to make a presentation for us this evening. It's now yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So maybe if I could just ask, we have Mrs. Scott, Mr. Hauk, and Ms. Knoll here to assist in this presentation. So maybe if they would like to come take a seat at the tables up front, maybe be able to help themselves spread out a little more and be prepared to have some dialogue. But I have prepared, Mr. Chairman, a PowerPoint that I will present to the board tonight, just to give some background on the Friendship Center financial landscape and what has already and hopefully tonight will be proposed by staff pursuant to the discussion on the Friendship Center financial landscape. So I will get to that. Oh, and I would be remiss if I did not mention that there are members of the Friendship Center Operating Board here tonight as well. So thank you for your attendance. Quickly, just to introduce the Friendship Center, as we all know, I just put in here the mission statement of the center. Obviously, the Friendship Center strives to fulfill the recreational needs of our community in a family-oriented environment. We are committed to providing high-quality health and fitness services at a reasonable cost in a socially active setting. So the Friendship Center had opened its doors on January 2000. At this point in 2019, obviously it is nearing approximately 20 years old. So the physical plant of the center is beginning to near life expectancy in some ways. In particular areas of the facility. Many of the aspects of the building have already reached the threshold of life expectancy and are now in need of repair or replacement. Just a quick overview here of the demographic population of the center. So currently the center holds 7,415 memberships. And again, these are memberships, not necessarily individuals. So there are 7,415 memberships. We fully expect that the number of active individuals who are within that number are closer to about 10,000. Of those 7,000, 3,721 are Lower Paxton Township resident memberships, and the remainder obviously are non-residential memberships. 24 Lower Paxton Township residents utilize the financial assistance program. So that is a program that is designed to help those in need who are unable to maintain, paid memberships in some way. 8 are adult participants, and 16 are children participants. And then I have a breakdown here of the membership type and the percentage of the overall membership population. Silver sneakers making up the greatest percentage of the overall membership of the center at 35. And then you can see going down, we have Prime at 31.5%, annual membership at 22%, Silver and Fit at 9%, Global Fit at 0.8%, and monthly membership at 0.8%. Don't ask me what each one of those categories are. Ms. Scott would certainly be able to answer those questions much better than I. Quick overview on the funding of the center. So the center is actually funded through two main pots of monies, if you will. The first being Fund 33, which is the Friendship Center Operating Fund. In 2019, the budget for that fund is $2,491,060. And this budgets all operational revenues and expenditures of the center, including rental income, township contributions, memberships, personnel, administrative expenses, and so on and so forth. That is where all the operational action of the center is derived from. And then there is the Friendship Center Capital Improvement Fund, which is line item 33-120.12. In 2019, the budget for that line item and fund is set at $0. The last time this particular fund was utilized was back in 2017 to expense Q4 equipment leases and purchases. So to date, the balance of that fund is at $0. I understand the history of that fund the fund was created in order to obviously take into consideration capital improvements that are needed in the center, and over time the fund was to be funded through center allocations through the annual budget, but as operational needs persist, that fund is not able to be funded as adequately as it should. So that's why it is at $0 today. But they are the two major funds through which the center is operated. So the outstanding debt on the Friendship Center exists alongside other township and authority debt. This debt is procured through general obligation notes through the bond process, which the board is now too familiar with at this point, but that is why we are here tonight. So to date, the outstanding bonds attributable to the Friendship Center stand at approximately $2,201,653, and that comes at an annual debt service of approximately $254,021 up to $399,060 annually, and that extends through currently 2025. So, as we go closer to 2025, those numbers range anywhere from the 250 to the 399, depending on what year we are along the bond schedule. So these bonds were issued in some way over the years to assist the Friendship Center in meeting. So in order actually to assist the Friendship Center in meeting this annual debt service that you had just heard about, the township instituted an interfund loan, which we commonly refer to now as the debt smoothing scheme. This extended essentially the Friendship Center's effective debt up until 2034 and brought Friendship Center debt service to a flat annual amount of $231,000, with the township temporarily covering the difference in between. The board has made it a point to make sure that we have level debt service, and that's what the debt smoothing certainly goes into making happen. As well as obviously allowing the center to adequately fund the difference in the bond allocation. In fiscal year 2019, the general fund will have covered $167,793, with the Friendship Center covering the remainder, which is $231,000. That is, again, the debt smoothing operation that we have put into place. With the fiscal year 2019 payment, $1,009,807 will have been covered by the general fund in Friendship Center debt smoothing thus far. On the current schedule, the Friendship Center will be making payments to the township from years 2026 until year 2033 in order to make whole the township for these debt smoothing years and payments that have taken place thus far. I have a slide here that explains the Friendship Center revenues in a brief overview way. So the Friendship Center's 2019 operating budget anticipates revenues of $2,531,475 from the following sources, which are the administrative income, which accounts for approximately $438,000, which includes things like rental facilities, trainer income, and also the township debt smoothing payment and the township senior center contribution. $100,000 comes from the township in the form of a contribution. $594,975 comes in the form of programming income. These are items such as fitness, preschool, aquatics, day camp, senior, special events, climbing wall, all sorts of programming opportunities that the center is involved in on a daily basis. And then the remainder of that revenues come from membership and pass income, which accounts for approximately $1,398,500. And that includes all types of memberships and passes throughout the year. I also had provided just a pie chart to show those different sources and where they fall relative to the overall revenue scheme. And these categories are found within the budget. That's I didn't just pull these categories out of thin air. They are located within the budget, and that's just to provide some explanation as to why they are set up the way they are. But same thing with the expenditures. You can see the different categories. So in 2019, the Friendship Center's operating budget anticipates expenditures of $2,491,060 on the following items. $1,222,500 coming in the form of administrative expenses, which include items such as bank fees and professional services, and the largest portion of the pie, which happens to go to staff salaries, overtime, and office supplies, and then some other sundry things such as postage, advertising, and then some other additional personnel benefits that are within that category. $436,500 coming from programming expenses. These are going towards programming expenses. Sorry, these are not revenues; these are expenditures. So these are expenditures such as the annual club automation, credit card fees that the township covers for the customers, programming guides, instructors' payroll, and some other miscellaneous programming supplies built in there. $433,000 going towards facility expenses. These are things such as facility depreciation allocations, utilities, facility maintenance, certain capital equipment replacements, and then the remainder of the expenses going towards debt service at approximately $399,060. And again, that varies from year to year as we go along the overall debt schedule. So the board has not yet received 2018's key indicator report. The key indicator report is a report that has been provided to the board quarterly, historically here in the township. And so you soon shall be receiving the quarter 4 2018 key indicator report, which is the year end, obviously. So it encompasses all of the fiscal year 2018. You'll see that for all the departments as you typically do. But I just wanted to give a quick introduction and a quick overview of the 2018 report, which again you should receive shortly. And so again, these numbers are yet in somewhat of a draft form, as we have not yet completed the audit. We're still waiting for some things, and so these numbers are not set in stone, but they are as close at this point as we can get them. So the center's 2018 quarter 4 key indicator report will show revenues in the amount of $2,150,533, and these are actual numbers. Expenditures in the amount of $2,380,558, or a net of negative $230,025. Now, what that includes, and what the board typically sees and has seen and will continue to see if we continue to operate under the system we have, is a modified accrual of that particular fund. So there are obviously two ways of doing fund budgeting and accounting, which are cash basis and accrual basis, and not to get too far into the weeds in terms of accounting, because I don't know what I'm talking about, but just to give a brief overview of those two items, the board typically sees the modified accrual, which in my humble opinion is typically the most difficult to read and understand in local government, but that's the way we handle these accounts. This particular fund, as it is an enterprise fund, so what that shows in that form of accounting are things such as depreciation, facility and equipment depreciation, among some other accounting practices that we have funds, coming on and off of balance sheets and things like that. So all that to say, that $230,025 is the modified accrual statement that you will receive in the key indicator report. However, if we were to take a look at that number on a cash basis, the Friendship Center's net cash position at the end of fiscal year 2018 would have been negative $147,914. So a substantial improvement, if you will, over what the board typically sees through that modified accrual system of accounting. And the highlight to this point and the positive point of this particular point of information is the fact that that number of negative 147,000 is compared to what we had shown in the fiscal year end of 2017, which was negative $217,736, which is shown there in cash basis.
Brad,
I'm sorry, yes.
Not to interrupt your flow, but the revenue in the amount of $2,150,533 is the amount of money the township loaned the Friendship Center for debt smoothing included in that $2,150,000 number?
Yes, it is.
Okay. It's
No.
not?
It's backed out, budgeted as.
Oh, now it's green.
There we
Now you
go.
can hear me. Sorry. Yeah, it's budgeted as a revenue, but then at year end, the full accrual statements are actually the more accurate statements that include everything, all the revenues and expenses are. The reason it's backed out is because our auditors told us that that's a loan that has to be paid back. So you can't count it at year end as a revenue on the Friendship side or an expense on the township side. It's just a loan. So it ends up on the balance sheet in the due to general fund number, in liability that's due to general fund. So that $2,150,000 you're looking at, I just wanted to double check here. It does not include that, but it.
So then on the expenditure side, would the would the smoothing dollars be included then in the 2,380,000, or is that also not inclusive in
No,
that
that's
number?
not
It's just
included in
totally
that.
off, sort of
Yeah,
almost
that's-
off the book. I
that's
don't want to
on-
use the term off the books and alarm people, but it's
Yeah.
not included in this
It's
calculation.
not on the Friendship Center, it's on the township side and a due from Friendship Center.
Okay.
That's an asset on the township side, a due from the Friendship Center, and a liability on the Friendship Center side and a due to the township general fund.
So in
So
addition,
they're not, they end up not in revenue or expense for either entity at year end. It ends up on either a liability or an asset, depending whether you expect to get paid or have to pay it like Friendship Center is.
So what would the additional be then, Tim?
I'm sorry, what's
What
that?
would the additional be? The additional part of the debt smoothing?
in other words, I think.
It keeps adding up year after
Okay,
year.
but, I mean, do you have a
but-
number right now?
Oh,
I-
right now, yeah, and Brad spoke to
Robin,
that
is
earlier.
where you're getting to, I think it's the same question that I had, is, so if we have a net negative of 230,025, is the amount that the township loans for debt smoothing in addition to that 230,025?
Right.
Is
I'm
that where
looking
you were
for the
headed?
In the
total-
future,
the total
yeah, it'll
number.
have to be paid back in addition to that. Right now, it stood at like about $1,010,000 at the end of 2018. And then there's a few other things in that due to general fund. The biggest thing is like $91,000 that was overspent from the 2013 bond issue. It got added into there. But it's basically about $1,010,000 now. But every year it gets added to until they'll
Right.
start paying it back in 2026, I believe it is.
So the actual net loss would be 230,025 plus the 167,793 in debt smoothing to get to what the actual loss was. No, we're not talking about the cash basis number, but the first item on the slide. You would
Well-
have to add those two together to get to what the actual loss was for the year.
Well, you could look at it that way, but really that's just an amount that's going to be paid back in the future. The only thing that's going to ultimately hit the Friendship Center expense is the interest on that debt smoothing loan.
Okay.
The principal amount, the $1,010,000 I'm talking about, if they're able to pay it back, that won't be an expense. That'll just go away piecemeal as they pay it back from 2026 to 2034. But the interest on that will start hitting their books in the years 2026 to 2034.
Okay.
I know what you're saying, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a different way of looking at it, but it's,
Well, I'm trying to get to how much money we're actually losing each year. And even though that money is going to be paid back, basically what's happening is the Friendship Center is taking a loan from the township to help cover a portion of operating loss, and then we'll repay that in the future whenever they have lower debt service.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as
would the-
long as there's enough, income to.
Assuming that
cover it.
there's money in
Yeah.
2026 and going forward to pay
Yeah.
it back. Yeah.
Right.
So Tim, would the current debt be around $3 million then?
Hold on a second.
Are you adding the
Yeah, I
debt
just
service
added-
plus the
Well,
loan
yeah.
smoothing loan?
Actually,
Yeah.
at this point in time, hold on. I feel like an accountant. Yeah, at this point in time, they got about 2,150,000 or so in debt, plus another 1.1 million due to general fund, and then there's also negative cash of like 600,000 that they owe just for like operating expenses that they pay us on an ongoing basis, and it's just backed up in the time that they haven't been able to pay it just yet. So-
What do you mean backed up?
Like our operating expenses that we pay all their bills for them, and then they
Okay.
reimburse us. They just owe us basically another 600,000 on that right now as of the end of the year, and then about 1.1 million in the due to general fund. So if you wanted to add the due to general fund to the debt, it's going to be a little bit, maybe like 3.25 million. And then whenever they get caught up on paying us for what they owe for the operating expenses, that'd be an addition. I don't know that that's the full 600,000. They're like in the hole. It's just that they haven't reimbursed us yet because we're like, maybe like 2 or 3 months after all that stuff goes through, Alicia's able to work up the numbers and on the bill and then write a check from them. So really, I just look at the due to general fund amount and the, and the bonds that are there. So it's about 3.25 million right now.
About 3.25 million. Now,
Yeah.
were we, and I will be quick to caveat that we are kicking ideas around that no course of action has been decided. That's the reason we're having these discussions, so that we can arrive at a course of action. Were we to refinance the debt of the Friendship Community Center, that would be a $3.25 million addition to the
Well-
refinancing?
If they include that debt smoothing loan in there.
Mm-hmm.
But bear in mind that, I don't think that's including like the 91,000 that was overspent from the 2013 bond issue. So basically, if, I wasn't sure what, you said Jay Wenger had worked up the numbers, right, Brad, from Susquehanna Advisors?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so the Jay Wenger, if you remember back a couple of months ago, had presented a proposal, a bond, a hypothetical bond proposal, which included restructuring and refinancing of outstanding general obligation funds. And the portion that was attributable to the Friendship Center was the $2,200,653 outstanding bond debt. So that's the number that you saw
In that,
months ago.
but that does
correct.
not include the debt smoothing loan from the township to
Well,
the Friendship Community
that-
Center.
Yeah. That does not. That may be addressed in a future slide.
Okay, okay, well,
Potentially, but-
now that I've interrupted you, why don't I let you return to your narration
Okay.
then? Okay, go
All right.
ahead.
Can I just ask Mr. Houck one question? Tim, the $90,000, is that included in the 325? The 3.25?
3.25.
Yeah,
The
the
$90,000
90,000
that they had-
overspending of the 2013
Yeah,
bond.
that's in the due to general fund number. That's part of the $1,098,000 general fund, and if you add that to the 2.1 million debt, yeah, it'd be part of the 3.25.
Okay, just
Yeah,
wanted to know.
yeah.
Okay.
But that's not something that would be refunded, obviously, because the bond debt can be refunded. You can't really refund, what they had overspent before.
Mm-hmm. But it's still a debt.
Yeah, it is still debt, yeah.
Okay, Brad, do you wish to continue?
Sure, sure.
Hopefully you can get back in your,
Yeah,
yes.
I'll give it a shot. So, kind of all that to say, I think what this slide, and well, my point of the slide anyway, was to show that operationally, anyway, the center over the past 2 years has done an exceptional job. Year-end 2017 had shown again a loss of $217,000, whereas the loss in cash accounting basis anyway would be the $147,000. So that was the point of this slide at the end of it that was trying to get across there. So now we get to the portion of the PowerPoint where I outline some staff proposals that were included in the packet by way of memos, 2 memos that had been provided to the board via staff, which potentially could provide some long-term positive fiscal stability to the center, but also to the township. So in memo number 1, which was dated April 8th, 2019, and the author of that memo would have been Mr. Wolf, just for purposes of finding it in the packet, was essentially to explaining a consolidation of the Friendship Center projects and the police radio upgrades allocations, which were found in the proposed series of 2019 bonds, which again had been presented to the board on March 19th, and actually to the authority board by Mr. Wenger and his group. So in that proposal by Mr. Wenger, you had seen $1 million in Friendship Center projects, and a separate allocation for police radio upgrades. At the time, it was $600,000, if you remember correctly. I have updated this slide to reflect the actual need of the radio system, which is $522,000, not to confuse you anymore. So this memo number 1, as I refer to it here, proposes that we refinance existing debt attributable to the Friendship Center for purposes of lowering annual debt service, covering the need for new capital projects, and addressing prior debt smoothing payments made by the township. So this would lower the proposed 2019 debt service that you had initially seen by $522,000, essentially removing from it the portion attributable directly to the police radio upgrade project, and therefore lowering the total aggregate annual debt service covered by the township, again, over that proposal that you had seen in March of 19. So essentially, we're in this proposal refinancing all the existing debt from the Friendship Center, taking advantage of lower rates from the time of those initial bond issuances, thereby lowering the annual debt service attributable to the Friendship Center from the at most $399,000 down to approximately $180,000 annually. And those numbers are pretty similar to what you had seen in the original proposal by Mr. Wenger, so you can use those as a frame of reference. But so the proposal shows that we would keep $1 million worth of Friendship Center bond issuance allocation. From that $1 million due Friendship Center capital improvements, which were highlighted in the memo, and also take from it the $522,000 in police radio upgrades, and in that way, we would be able to essentially underwrite or cover $522,000 worth of township debt smoothing payments that had occurred in the past. So it doesn't cover all of the approximately $800,000 debt smoothing payments, but it does take into consideration a large portion of that. The remainder of which may be worked out through an agreement between the township and the center, if that's what the board would want to explore a bit more. And so then the second memo that you had seen in your packet, which was dated May 9th of this year, was authored for references of finding it by Alicia Knoll. The proposal shows an absorption of the Friendship Center building, so as an asset, the building itself, from the enterprise fund into the general fund of the township. The general fund, and I'll just kind of highlight what that would do to both the general fund and to the Friendship Center budget. So that in this proposal, the general fund would gain a 65,000 square foot asset worth approximately $8.2 million as of the 2013 appraisal, which is the last appraisal that we have. The general fund would absorb $66,500 in DRARE rent and utilities as revenues. The general fund would charge the Friendship Center a rent, which is comparable to the dollar per square foot rental that we see in the DRARE case. That would bring the rental to the rental for the Friendship Center operations at $100,300 as revenue coming to the general fund. The general fund would no longer contribute the $100,000 to the Friendship Center annually. And the general fund would also no longer make the annual debt smoothing payments to the Friendship Center at $168,000. All that comes to an annual cash revenue, if you will, to the township of $434,800. From that, though, you would have to take the $70,000, which the Friendship Center budget currently allocates to maintenance and improvements of the building itself, which the township would then have to cover, and also the $188,000 annual debt service, which is using the number again that was proposed in the bond proposal by Mr. Wenger. So the township would have to cover that as well as an asset of the township itself. All that comes to a bottom line of the township having an estimated annual savings in this proposal of $176,800. Then we flip it over to the Friendship Center side and what the impact on the center would be under this proposal. So those impacts are that the Friendship Center would lose the $66,500 in rail rental and utility reimbursements. The Friendship Center would lose the $100,000 in township contributions. The center would lose the $168,000 in annual debt smoothing coverages. And then the center would obviously have to be required to make the annual rental payments to the general fund, which again would be levied here in this proposal at $100,300. The center, however, would no longer be required to meet annual debt service in the amount of $399,000, and the center would reduce annual expenditures again by the approximately $70,000, which is allocated towards building maintenance and improvements, which the township would cover under this scheme. All that comes to a bottom line of the Friendship Center being in a net cash position, hypothetically, of course, of $34,200. Both of these proposals would need a significant further investigation. We would have to be in conversation with our bond counsel, with our solicitor, with our auditors, a whole host of individuals which may provide guidance on each proposal from a legal framework and from an accounting framework. They also are obviously, again, proposals to the board, details of which may be hashed out upon desire of the board. But again, we wanted to provide these two staff proposals on the long-term financial landscape of the center, both of which we think may provide long-term stability, neither of which would provide immediate kind of a single bullet theory, if you will, for funding. They would not provide immediate impact in a positive way. They must be considered long-term approaches to handling the landscape. And so I just give that slight caveat. But again, also in a document I provided to the board, I did indicate that both of these proposals, both of the memos can be married or in some other way, we can make some type of a hybrid approach to combining both of the proposals, taking into consideration 2019 bond issuance, as well as kind of this more long-term asset absorption by the township. So with that, I stand ready for questions, and as does staff.
One quick question. In terms of proposal number one, what does this do to the length of the bond repayment? Since I see numbers dropping in terms of what would have to be paid back initially, what would be the length of repayment of these bonds? How many years out are we going now?
So it would be extended until year for the Friendship Center allocation would be extended out until year 2039.
And their current repayment of the debt smoothing money would be 2034? So we're adding, would that be correct?
Yeah, it would be adding to that. Now, right now, their current debt, that $2 million, it's set pretty much to be paid
Right.
off in 6 years.
In 6 years?
So
But
it's
and then
extending that
after
out
that,
another
they
14.
repay the debt smoothing. That would be scheduled to end by 2030. So we're essentially adding 5 years of repayment
Right.
in order. My concern is we not kick the can too far down the road, because where we have capital needs now, in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, there's going to be more capital needs.
Right, Mr. Chairman, if I may just speak to that, as I showed in kind of proposal number 2, I had shown a positive township position after that proposal. I mean, it would be prudent. The only way it would work as bringing on the Friendship Center as an asset to the township would be to take any positive cash position from that scenario and put it into the capital improvement fund, which through the budgeting process, I guess historically the center had been asked to provide a capital improvement plan. And from that plan, it called for approximately $180,000 worth of annual contributions to a capital improvement fund. So, any savings on the township side, would certainly be staff's recommendation to kind of park that money into the capital fund to address those exact needs.
Yeah, because, Brad, it says here in our packet about we taking the building ownership. It says it would leave the township with an additional $211,000. Well, we would be responsible for the outside of the building, and we just replaced the 2 of the units on top that I think were $107,000.
Correct.
And if I'm right, I think there's 14 units up there that are going bad. So
Correct.
you're talking another 12 units, leaving the township with an additional $211,000 in cash revenue. If they all go at the same time, that's a lot of money.
Yes, you are correct, and to address those particular concerns, I mean, you're right. There are a number of looming capital needs at the center. To speak specifically to the HVAC concerns, the bond proposal in this scheme would cover the HVAC system, the replacement of the HVAC system, which is approximately $430,000 or so. It would also address a comprehensive roof repair at about $35,000. So those 2 items would be addressed through the bond. But you're right. I mean, there are a number of
Right.
other
We would be
concerns.
responsible if we took ownership of the building.
Correct.
And do we know what's going to come next? We're talking about $1 million for the HVAC system, for the roof repair. It's a 20-year-old building. It would be, I think, reasonable to assume that other things are going to go. There's going to be other capital maintenance needs. After we put $1 million into those items of maintenance, what comes next? Are we going to, a year from now or 2 years from now, be looking at another $1 million and another $1 million a year after that? Has anybody actually sat down and developed a list of capital projects that we can foresee? Now, obviously, there's always things that break down that you cannot foresee, but if we took a comprehensive look at that building and all the systems and all the items in it, at some point you're going to have to replace windows, you're going to have to replace the swimming pool, liner or concrete or whatever it's made out of. Do we have any sort of a schedule or list of what that's going to be?
We had presented that to you guys in November last year, general guidelines, which is where Brad had come up with the $188,000 that we would need to have in the capital improvement funds for the various items. It included lists that had the HVAC units, that has a life expectancy of about 15 to 20 years, the pool liner, just a list of different items that included that.
And how far out does that go? How many years out are we looking ahead?
I believe we took it out to 2034 as well.
Okay. Could we get a fresh copy of that now that we're into this discussion? That would be most helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It went out to 2024.
2024.
Under this, the 5-year.
That was just the first, when you had asked about the bond, you had asked for the next 3 to 5 years, but when we presented in November,
What was it?
we went through.
Okay. If we could have a fresh copy, that's so we can refresh our, 'cause it would be important that we are able to look more than 3 to 5 years down the road, because especially, this, we're going to be paying these bonds to 2039. The question becomes, what else do we need between now and 2039? To the degree you can foretell those things.
Brad, the $100,000 that we pay for the Parks and Recreation, are they going to stay at the Friendship Center, or are they coming back to the Township Building?
Yeah, so under either scenario, we hadn't assumed that the department would move. So that is obviously the prerogative of the board, but under these scenarios, no, there would be no movement of the department.
And I don't remember seeing the $25,000 anywhere here that we give them for the Friendship, or for the Senior Center, or am I missing it?
Correct. No, that was not, we didn't touch that.
Okay, so we would still pay $25,000 to the Friendship Center for the Senior Center.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
Which brings up a good point. Do we have a comprehensive list or spreadsheet or whatever it is you might, whatever format you might have it in, that would tell us exactly how much money from the general fund the township puts into the Friendship Center each year? As we went through this very detailed proposal, and my congratulations to you and to the whole staff for what was obviously a tremendous amount of work to get us to this point, and we have a lot more to go. But it would be really helpful to us to know, how much are we spending a year on this? There's $100,000 here, there's debt smoothing there, there's this payment for the Senior Center here. Is that all in any one place where we could look and say, okay, here's where all the township expenditures that are on the community center go? We have staff costs for what township manager, what our finance department, what human resources, the time they spend on the Friendship Center. All of that goes into the overall cost. Do we have that in any one place?
I have a cash basis spreadsheet and an accrual basis spreadsheet where I start with, their accrual year-end audited numbers, and then work down to see, what they've actually gained or lost. But that doesn't include like Alicia's time, my time, or Gayla's time that does the payroll, or the IT people's time, or the HR lady's time. That's all stuff we do bill back to the sewer authority, but those numbers really were never billed back to the Friendship Center. They've been, we've been servicing them, so that stuff's been, I guess, pretty much free since day one. But I have the spreadsheets that show, the cash and accrual basis and how you get to the true cash numbers. But again, those cash numbers don't show, what their depreciation expense is. And the thing is, at the FC, when they buy an asset, it's moved out of expense at year end and then onto the balance sheet, and then it's expensed piecemeal every year over the life of the asset and depreciation. So you really should be looking at depreciation expense and total costs, unless whenever this place was first set up, before any of us were ever here, I don't know how much of it was built with like free grant money, or I know I was able to track down like contributions that the township made every year, and an organization called HESCAC, HESCAC, and some other contributions, but I don't know if any of that was free money. If any of it was free money used for assets, and some of that depreciation expense, whatever portion is attributable to that, maybe you shouldn't really count an expense because you got free money for it. But I have no way of knowing how much of that was free, if any of it was free. I do know, that the township, they started out like $300,000 they were giving them in '99. Then it went to $250,000 from 2000 through 2002, then 200,000, 2003, then 150,000 in '04, and then it's been at 100,000 a year ever since 2005, except we also did give 25,000 for the senior center. We started that in 2014. But I mean, I have these spreadsheets that would show you the cash and the accrual basis what they made, but again, that's not including like any of our time that we may have spent on it, or that IT did.
Are those spreadsheets in Excel or some program that you
They're
could
in
email to us?
Excel. They're just
If you
simple
could email
Excel.
those to us, I'd like to take a look. Because I've been asked the question on a number of occasions, and I'm curious myself. What do we as a township, in terms of taxpayer dollars, actually spend on this facility? And that seems to be a somewhat elusive answer. So I would like to try to get to that. It would help us to understand exactly what our investment in the project is each year.
Is it too simple to say that the center revenue covers mostly everything except for our, what was it, $100,000 contribution or rental, I guess, for parks, and then the $180,000 for debt smoothing? Is that?
Yeah,
significant.
there's still a little bit of a loss every year, but that makes it a lot, less significant.
Well, I mean, as far as what taxpayers, as opposed to what members and the county kicks in a little bit for the senior center? No.
No, the county kicks
That's-
in nothing.
Oh, okay.
They do not pay. It's Dauphin County Senior Center, but we are footing the bill.
They're not paying us anything?
They pay nothing.
Really?
Nothing.
Didn't they used to pay $25,000 or something?
Yeah, well, we're paying to help, am I right, Rachel, like with the electric and the water, and we said we had decided to do that back in 2014. And residents of Lower Paxton are using that, but there's also residents from other municipalities in Dauphin County, but they pay us nothing.
Okay, well, point is, between
Might have
those,
to have a talk with the commissioners about this.
those two, the debt smoothing and what we contribute for parks, is it, outside of that, is it a great number? I mean, I assume, we say, because we're talking about how much staff expenses, is staff covered by Friendship Center revenue?
Yes, at this time, we do have staff covered. Majority of the staff is covered. However, if you are looking at the Parks and Rec Department, I believe we only have 3 or 4 staff members that are considered Parks and Rec, which prior to the building, we had at least 10 to 12 staff members that were just in Parks and Rec. So I think it's important to recognize that prior to the building, we were servicing the community with more staff. Does that make sense?
Well, and just to echo the others, I really thank you for putting this together. It's a lot to absorb, and it's a big issue. Obviously it doesn't address the ongoing challenges of how to break even, how to get into the black in this current marketplace when you're trying to run this kind of facility. It doesn't speak to, the health insurance reimbursement for members and how that dictates our bottom line often. So this is more of the big picture, how to handle debt and how to handle the big stuff, and the other challenge is still there. But I really appreciate you bringing us these two ideas.
Rachel, can I just ask you a question? Brad had said there's 7,000 members.
Correct.
Okay, so on a weekly basis, how many members do you think attend the Friendship Center?
Oh, gosh. As far as the number of members attending, I can't give a precise number because we also allow non-members to come in and utilize the facility through programming and recreational classes such as Learn to Swim. The Learn to Swim program alone brings in 300-400 new participants each season.
So we don't know exactly how many Lower Paxton Township residents utilize the center each day.
Not per day, but based on that number of the 7,400, 3,700 were township residents.
But
That's
are they using it? I mean, I was a member of LA Fitness for many years, and I paid my monthly dues, and I went 4 or 5 times, so I probably paid about $150 a visit. But what we're trying to get at is what is the usage of the facility by residents of Lower Paxton Township?
I don't have that precise number, but I can tell you when you come out to the facility, it is always packed. I mean,
Well, that's all well and good, but if it's always packed with people who are not residents of Lower Paxton Township, then the taxpayers of Lower Paxton Townships is subsidizing a facility for people who are not residents of our township. And my main concern are the residents of Lower Paxton Township. So to me, it's a vital statistic to know, day to day, how many residents of Lower Paxton Township utilize the building.
And
Yeah.
Brad, you had said, 7,400 some memberships, but that doesn't actually mean users. You threw out 10,000 as far as, because I guess some of those could be family memberships or multiple
correct.
people.
Of the annual memberships, that's one unit, and so unit could be a family of 5.
And not everybody who uses it has to swipe when they come in.
At this time, with the new design, we do have it that you have to swipe your membership card.
But I mean, even if you're coming in, it's not all members coming in, or you can come in for particular programs.
Correct, and we do have it that we have program cards that if you're participating, that you swipe your program card to be in the building.
So ultimately, does everybody have to swipe something? As far as getting an idea of daily users,
That's
we're
the
getting
goal,
it.
and I could
Okay.
definitely do a printout of that
Okay.
for us.
And then, Rachel, the insurance ones.
Yeah.
I know, excuse me, we only get paid when they swipe the card.
Correct.
So I had asked before, how many, we know how many insurance, I think it was like 3,000 or something.
5,000.
But 5,000, but how many of them are actually swiping their card? Because I know I've had people say to me, oh, I'm a member of the Friendship Center through my insurance. And I say to them, do you go? Oh, no, but the Friendship Center gets paid. I said, no, they don't. They only get paid when the card is swiped. So my question is, out of that 5,000, how many are actually using the Friendship Center? Because we can say they're a member, but how many are we actually getting paid for?
Right.
How many are swiping?
Each month, we generate a revenue of around $18,000 to $20,000 of return swipes, based on the $3 per visit that we allow up to max of 10. So I would have to do the math to break that
Okay,
down.
so it's $3 per visit, and we only get paid for 10 visits a month?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Remind me to tell Mr. Chrisman that.
Okay, I will.
I will, because he told me every time you go there, you get paid, and I thought it was 12 times, so it's 10 times. So
Uh-oh.
they could go 7 days a week, and we're only going to get paid for 10 of those.
Correct.
Right, okay.
And if we're saying at this point, roughly half of the users are non-residents, is that just the way it's going to be, that we can't, and there's no economic model, or there's, we have 50,000 residents, that there's only a certain percentage that are going to use the facility, and that number, that percentage realistically isn't going to change, because you're only going to get so many people to use the facility? Is that a number that we shouldn't expect to change no matter what we do?
I think there are other ways that we could look to create more benefits for the residents by lowering the different rates versus what a non-resident is paying to attract more residents.
You know, we sort of have two tracks being commingled here. One of which is immediate and urgent, that being the financial track, because what are we looking at? July, August, we have to launch the bond deal. So we need to determine what the structure of that bond deal is going to be. Are we going to fold in and refinance existing Friendship Community Center debt into that bond deal? As Mr. Gottschall said, if their interest rates are more favorable, that could be a very positive thing for us, lower everybody's costs. We have the $1 million in capital needs that we have to consider for that bond deal. So that part of it we need to really prioritize. And I guess memo number 2, we need to have a policy discussion as to how we want the structure to be. But then there's a longer term policy discussion as to, and that's why I'm asking for specific numbers as to what are our costs, what are our comprehensive overall costs to taxpayers, and how many township residents benefit from those costs. And that then launches a longer term policy debate. But for now, let's focus on the refinancing and the bond issue, because we do have to, within 2 months or 3 months, be ready to deal with that. So can we refine those items? I mean, we can get some board impact here. A lot of this is we've only had the memo for a couple days. Just myself, my initial reaction is I like the strategies contained in memo number 1. I'm not real sure about the relationship change in memo number 2. That, I think, needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. And perhaps your discussions with the auditors and with the attorneys will tell us whether that's even if that's a possibility. I sort of look, and maybe this is wrong, but I sort of look at the Friendship Center like I do well, it's called the Sewage Authority. I don't want to give a bad connotation by using the word, but the Sewage Authority is its own entity, and we have in place, it has its own budget, and we get reimbursed for township staff that do work for the authority. And I like the idea of the Friendship Center being its own enterprise so that we can more easily see exactly what's there, although that number also appears to be rather elusive at this point.
We just did that with stormwater management, breaking down the costs.
Correct.
Same idea.
Yes. Yeah, when we added the stormwater management into the, so I think it's really important for us to be able to have the ability to know exactly what things cost and exactly what benefit township residents are getting for it, not only for the Friendship Center, but for everything else as well. And we're not quite there. So, much more work to do.
Thank you.
Any other board comments? Any public comment or questions? I know we've put a lot of detail out there this evening. Okay, seeing none, we will proceed to refine the suggestions in the memos that we've discussed. And again, our deep appreciation to all on the staff who you've clearly put a lot of time, effort, and thought, and I congratulate you on out-of-the-box thinking. Some of that I think will probably end up being adopted, maybe some won't, but it's great to see that there's a lot of thought going into this and entrepreneurship. That's really great.
And Tim, can you and Alicia maybe get together and see what the staff here at the Township Building, what their timing is on what they're putting in, their time for the Friendship Center?
Like
Is there any
cost
way to
or-
calculate that?
I
The
don't
amount of
know.
hours?
It'd be really hard. We could get some ballpark idea, but it would be really hard to get it. I mean, it would take a little time to get it to see, how much time actually Gala puts into the payroll and Amber puts into paying the bills and Alicia does stuff and me with the financials and whatever. And I don't know. I mean, would you want us to try to include like IT and like case time
Okay,
from
well,
HR
maybe,
as
I was
well?
just trying to think if there are, like, how many hours a week do you think everybody's putting putting in. I was just curious.
Come up with some ballpark.
The
Yeah.
current management agreement with the sewer authority is a 20%.
20%.
So basically, every quarter, I go through and tally up 20% of all the different salaries plus the benefits for those employees. So we could do something similar
Okay,
Okay.
to
okay,
rough it up, because we basically do the same thing for the sewer that we do.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
the
that would be
Friendship
good.
Center.
Okay, that would be good. Thank you.
I see a lot of operational similarities between the two. Clearly, the service is very different. But any other board questions, comments? Okay, well, I'm sure we will have this back before us for additional workshop discussion next month, and we'll hopefully refine things a bit. That takes us to item 9. We have improvement guarantees, development agreements, and plan reaffirmations. There are none. There are none, so that makes it easy. Is there any other business to come before the board? I will note that our next board meeting, and this is a date change, our meeting will be on Wednesday, May 22nd, rather than Tuesday, May 21st. Tuesday, May 21st is Election Day, and we would urge all registered voters, and if you're not registered by now, you're not going to be able to vote, but if you're a registered voter, we would urge you to go to the polls on May 21st and vote for the candidate or candidates of your choice. And our meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. Seeing no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you.